Okay, just to confirm one more time, you guys can hear me just fine?
Yeah, I can hear it just fine.
All right, that's awesome.
Yes, sir.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Beautiful. All right, can you guys see my screen? Oh, it looks like this is where we left it, I guess.
Yeah, I can see it pretty.
Awesome. Okay, it looks a bit blurry on my end, but it's coming up, guys. It's coming up. There you go. All right, let's get to work. So again, just kind of throw it back, we are gonna do one more chapter after this, and then probably just start doing a lot of revision exercises due to the differences in the new SAT. I've kind of explained what non-essential clauses are, but we're just going to go over it. Just in case anyone wasn't here, in case anyone would need to see this in the coming future. And I'll upload this video on the channel after sometime after this class. I actually need to upload one other video, so I'm going to upload two videos, one from last class and this class. I should still have it. Okay, so non-essential and essential clauses, right? This is the topic is probably just the name of the topic probably gives it away, right? So when something is non-essential, it just basically means it can kind of be done away with, right? So it means if we're looking at a sentence, a non-essential clause can be removed from that particular sentence without affecting the meaning, okay? The essential meaning of the sentence, it can be done without it. Usually a non-essential clause is just that part of the sentence that, one, if you take it away, the sentence will still make grammatical sense. And two, usually that part just modifies the sentence. So it just gives additional information to the sentence, right? So we have an example here. The Tower of London, which was begun by William the Conqueror in 1078, is one of the largest and most imposing fortifications in England. Can someone tell me what the non-essential in this particular sentence would be?
The one in bolded. The reason it's not essential is because the sentence can flow exactly perfectly fine with that. It means it's like expendable. So our non-essential clause, let's see, which was found by William Conqueror in 1978. So that's the
As
information, but we can do without it.
Yep, that's perfect, right? That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. The clause that's in bold right now, right? So if we take it away, just like you said, we can have the Tower of London is one of the largest and most imposing fortifications in England. All right. So this doesn't take away from the essential meaning of the sentence. The sentence still makes grammatical sense. And which was begun by William the Conqueror in 1078. If you notice, it just gives more information. It just about the Tower of London. So it just modifies that. All right. Again, that's pretty much what non-essential clauses are. So there's a couple of things you need to know about non-essential clauses. The first thing I would say is non-essential clauses, there's three ways to make up non-essential clauses, at least as far as I'm concerned. There's three ways to set up non-essential clauses. And one of them is a comma sandwich, right? So when you surround the words by a comma, like so, right? So there's a comma here, there's a comma here, and usually non-essential clause will come just before the verb, usually, just before the verb. In this case is, so between the subject is Tower of London. So right between the subject and the verb, you have the non-essential clause, which is, in this case, which was begun by William the Conqueror. So like I said, there's three ways usually to set up non-essential clause. I'm just going to write that down here. So you have a comma sandwich, just in case you guys are writing this down. You have a comma sandwich, that's your first way. Let me do it like this.
Hyphen, hyphen,
Pardon?
hyphen,
Yep,
a hyphen sandwich.
a hyphen sandwich, right? Yes, a hyphen sandwich. What some of you might call a dash, right? So, sandwich. Does anyone know? I can't spell today. Does anyone know what the third way would be?
Parentheses.
You're on fire. You're on fire, right? So parentheses, right, or the curved brackets, right? They're all they're just all sandwiches. Just all sandwiches. We love to eat. All right, so we have a comma sandwich, a hyphen sandwich, and a sandwich of parentheses, right? So commas. When we say sandwich again, just to make sure we're all on the same page. When we say sandwich, we just mean you have the first thing and the last thing being the same, right? So if it's a comma sandwich, it means it's in between commas. Comma will begin the non-essential clauses. The non-essential clause, you have the non-essential clause there, and then the comma will denote the end of the non-essential clause. So a hyphen sandwich, you're going to have two dashes, right? At the beginning and at the end, you have two hyphens. And parentheses, you have the same. One question I'll tell you guys is, I'll put it right here. Again, in case anyone is writing this, a good question is that not all these, okay, not all these sandwiches denote non-essential clauses. All right. So NECs being non-essential clauses. So not all these sandwiches denote non-essential clauses, right? But for the most part, these sandwiches will denote non-essential clauses. So let's look at a couple more examples. Okay, so we have let's look at the first version here. I'm going to highlight it. So the Tower of London, which was begun by William the Conqueror in 1078, is one of the largest and most imposing fortifications in London. What do you guys think is wrong with this question? And look closely.
All right, let's start off. It's not completely set off. The first end is set off, however, the last end is not.
The first is what?
The first part of it is set off. The part, there's a comma between London and Wales.
Exactly.
But there's no comma after the year 1078. Sorry.
Exactly, right? So you said the first part has been set up, the second part hasn't been, right? We have it's not being sandwiched. We have the Tower of London, comma, which was begun by William the Conqueror in 1078, is one of the largest. So now it just becomes like a run-on, you know, which was begun by William the Conqueror in 1078, is one of the largest and most imposing fortifications in England. That sounds like an exhaustive, like sentence. Okay, so having said that, do you guys see what's wrong with the other two, the last two?
Yep. The other one has it on the flip side. It has one at the end, but none at the finish, and the third has no.
Exactly, right? This is the opposite, right? The other one hasn't been set up at the beginning, right? It begins well, and then it has the comma right there. But then there's nothing there's nothing. Oh, it has a comma right there, but it doesn't have it at the beginning between London and 1078. And for the last one, it's just a run-on, right? Oops, that was bad. For the last one, there's just there's no comma denoting the non-essential clause. So it's just like a run-on sentence. So in order to fix the sentence, we have to place the commas in the right positions like we did earlier. All right, so just remember, if the sentence still makes sense, once you take the clause out, when you cross it out, that means two commas must be placed around that clause, and that clause is called a non-essential clause. Okay, so I said usually non-essential clause will fall between the subject and the verb. Another way to tell is that these words called relative pronouns. So these W relative pronouns or conjunctive adverbs is what they're technically called, but you never be asked to what they're called. But basically the W words. So which, whose, and where. So make sure you look for these W words actually. They will often show you that a non-essential clause is being set up or is supposed to be set up. Remember, not all sandwiches denote non-essential clauses, but again, make sure you pay attention to these words here, which, whose, and where. Usually, these signal the beginning of a non-essential clause. Okay, we're going to look at an example right away. Okay, let me take this up a little bit. I want you guys to quickly look at this, and let me know what you think the answer is. The example that's beginning with London. London, which was originally built by the Romans along the banks of the, I guess that's Thames, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, more than 2,000 years ago, contains some extremely modern neighborhoods. So if you're done looking at it, just feel free to say the answer. Sorry?
Choice D.
Did you say D?
Yeah, the last one, choice D.
Okay, choice D. All right.
D.
So we have, okay, that's another D. Okay, so we have two people on D. Is there anyone else who wants to go? If you're feeling shy, feel free to put it in the chat box. I'll look at it quickly. I'll give you guys maybe just a minute.
Need an explanation?
Yes, but just hold it before you explain. Let me just wait a minute to see if anyone else will put anything in the chat box, or if anyone is going to say anything, just to make sure they're not influenced. So let's see. Okay, so we have one in the chat box that also said D. Okay, so it looks like everyone is saying D. Okay, all right. I think that was Auden. You can give us your explanation as why you think choice D is correct.
All right. I'll give my explanation in form of elimination. Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right. Choice A is out of it because it possesses a semicolon, which can only be used when separating two independent clauses.
Beautiful.
Choice B, it says, even though it also closes it, it starts the other part with containing. And containing doesn't show this of the passage. It creates what we call a parallelism error, which leaves us with just B alone. Oh, choice A says no. It means it was like just saying London and everything is closed. London can't stand by itself, and just if it can't stand by itself, so that's self-explanatory. That's that as well.
Beautiful. So choice A is pretty much a run-on sentence, right? As well, without slacking proper punctuation, right? So yeah, just like Auden said, choice B, you do not have any reason to use a semicolon because you're not separating any two independent clauses. I love he used the word independent clauses, right? So two independent clauses, two sentences, whatever you want to call it. Choice C, setting up a fragment by using the word containing right after. It's like we will be expecting more information, so you can't just end the sentence like that. And choice D is the only one that perfectly puts that clause from which up to a go into a comma sandwich, leaving us with London contains some extremely modern neighborhoods, which makes sense. All right, looks like everyone is good there. So I will move on to the next example. So again, I would advise you guys to always read from probably the beginning of the sentence, because I know sometimes it might be confusing when you're looking at only the underlying portion. Okay. I don't know if you remember us looking at what we call strong transitions, right? So there's some transitions that can be used to begin. You can, if you notice the word begin here has been used in bold. Okay, the transitions that are considered to be strong enough to begin a sentence. I'll write some of them here. You have some that are already written down there. I'll add some more for you here. So, oh, we already have however, but I already started typing, so we'll put that there. We have therefore. We have consequently. You don't need to memorize this. You just need to be familiar with them. Nevertheless. Moreover. Feel like I'm forgetting one more. Yeah, so apart from these, however, the ones that are here down here, the ones that are here, however, therefore, in fact, indeed, for example, moreover, trying to see if there's anyone that can give you guys, but the only new one I've given you is consequently and nevertheless. However, therefore, thus, yeah, I think we can use thus as well. Consequently, nevertheless, and moreover. So there's some words that are they're strong enough to begin a sentence, right? To begin a clause. So these should only be used to begin a clause. If they're going to be used within the clause, they should be used non-essentially. So usually these transitions are followed by they come at the end of a sentence, right? So they're usually followed by a period or a semicolon. Okay, that's when we're considering them beginning a clause, and if not, they should be used non-essentially. So for example, the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. However, nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing. Because you could take that out, you've used it non-essentially, you can take that out and say in this case, you haven't used it non-essentially, you've used it to begin a clause. But then if you wanted to use it non-essentially, we'd have the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. Nearly 1,000 years later, however, it still remains standing. So if you notice something, however, which is a strong transition, has been used within the clause. When you use it within the clause, it should be used non-essentially. Otherwise, you typically use it at the beginning of a sentence. So right after a period or a semicolon, right? The period, a full stop, or a semicolon. And if you're using it within a sentence, within a clause, it's going to be a non-essential clause. What we can't do is this. The Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. However, nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing. Can anyone tell me what's wrong with this sentence? The one that I'm highlighting right now. Can someone tell me what's wrong with this sentence? If you're able to see it, what's wrong with it? And if you can't see it, that's okay too.
The choice is, however, that's what's wrong with it. The word, however, states that it's like saying it's built so long, and it's saying, however, it's like it's saying
Oh, I get what you're
long,
saying.
and conversely, it's still standing. You can say like it's built so long. A better word would be like, nevertheless, it's still standing.
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying. But I would say not necessarily because it's the word however. But you tell me what happens if you do this. I'm going to cross out the word however. Then can you read the sentence and tell me if you see what's wrong now?
London was built in the Norman conquest nearly 1,000 years later. It still remains standing.
So if you notice, this is what's happening. The Tower of London, which was built during the Norman conquest nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing. That sentence doesn't make sense. If you remove it, however,
it from it.
Pardon?
We should remove the it from it.
Yeah, that's maybe one of the ways we can fix it is if we remove the it from it. Yeah, like nearly 1,000 liters with during the Norman conquest, nearly 1,000 liters still remain standing, and probably we'll have to adjust some some punctuation. Yes, so just like Tower said, right? It's the commas with however. So what makes this wrong is because in this case, if we have let me see if we have the sentence down here. Yep, look at what happens here. The Tower of London, thank you, Tower, by the way. So the Tower of London, the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. Nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing. Is that this is a run-on sentence? Because first of all, the however is necessary, but the problem is, in the incorrect sentence, the word however has been used non-essentially. All right, this word is essential, so it should be the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest period. However, nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing. Maybe that would make sense if we're going to begin a new clause or something like that. But using it within the clause has to be non-essential. But in this case, we notice that this sentence ends on conquest. Does that make sense? This sentence ends on conquest. Do we have a version? Yeah, like this. In this case, this is correct because this sentence actually ends on the word conquest. The Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest period. We're beginning a new sentence now. So, and when we begin that new sentence, we can now use however. So the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. However, nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing. But in this case, we are starting a new clause that we haven't ended the sentence with conquest. And then we're making however, which is necessary. We're making it non-essential. So now we just have a run-on that looks like this. Oops, that was a very bad line. But anyway, we have a non-essential clause which looks like we have a badly punctuated sentence which looks like this, which is the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. Nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing. So it's kind of just a run-on sentence with bad punctuation. Is everyone okay there? Or is that a little bit confusing?
I'm fine.
Okay,
So
awesome.
could you repeat, please?
Oh yeah, I repeat that. Is that what you said? I think that's what
I
you
was
said.
that if you could repeat that, please.
Okay, for sure. I will do that. So, the reason why this particular sentence is incorrect is because first we need to understand that whenever we are using transitions like this, however, the ones that are highlighted here, however, therefore, in fact, indeed, for example, moreover, and we have some more at the top here. Hopefully you can see them. We have some more at the top here that I put here, like consequently, nevertheless. So these words are called strong transitions. Okay, I'm using strong in quotation marks because they're strong enough to begin clauses. They're strong enough to begin sentences. So they should always only be used after a period, a full stop, or a semicolon. If not, the only other exception is that they should be used non-essentially, right? So these words should only be used to begin a sentence, or if they're within a clause, they should be used non-essentially. So that's the first thing that we need to understand. So we have an example of this sentence here that's in has been sort of encircled. So in the circle, the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. However, nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing. So we can see that this makes sense. This clause makes sense. This sentence makes sense. Why? Because the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. That's a full sentence. We have the subject, the Tower of London. We have the verb was, right? The conjugated verb that's corresponding to the subject, the Tower of London. So we have the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. That's a sentence. It stands alone. Good. And then we have however following after a semicolon. That's okay, because remember, words, transitions like however, therefore, should always be followed by a period, which is a full stop, or a semicolon, always, if they're beginning a clause. Otherwise, if they're within a clause, they should be used non-essentially. So that's okay in this case. However, nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing. And if you recall, when we were looking at if we recall when we were looking at what do you call that, the previous chapter 8, we were looking at transitions. If you recall, with transitions, this transition here is necessary. Why? Because the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. This was like I'm guessing like 1,000 years ago, because the sentence goes to say nearly 1,000 years later it still remains standing. So these are two contrasting ideas. Remember, we have three types of transitions. We have the ones that continue, we have the ones that are cause and effect, right? And we have the ones that are contradictors, right? So the ones that continue, the ones that contradict, and the ones that are cause and effect. So here we have a contradicting situation. Okay, it's like saying Jerome or Audin or any of you guys who were born 80 years ago, but you somehow look 18. However you look 18, right? Or but you look 18. However you look 18. You know, it doesn't make sense to say Jerome and Audin were born 80 years ago, therefore they look 18. That doesn't make sense, right? Because you can't use the word therefore is cause and effect. If I say you were born 18 years ago, therefore you look like a teenager, that makes sense, right? Because the word therefore is a cause and effect transition, but the word however shows a contradicting, right, idea between two clauses. It shows a contradiction between two ideas. Like in this case, it was built during the Norman conquest. So you'd expect that this building has fallen, right? This tower has fallen. But it says the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. However, nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing. Now, why am I explaining this transition? I'm explaining this because I want you to realize that the word however is actually important in this case. What happens if we cross it out? Can we use the sentence without it? We can, but if we do, we should use it properly. Like in this case, the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest nearly 1,000 years later. However, it still remains standing. Okay, so because we've used it around the comma sandwich, this means however is a non-essential clause. So does it make sense without it? Yes, it does. And look at the version here. Nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing, right? So the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. Nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing because we've crossed out the however. So that makes sense. So this sentence can be done without however. But the problem is putting however in this case, this is wrong because watch this. First of all, it's wrong for the simple reason that it has come, we've used it, when beginning a new clause, it should always be used after a period or a semicolon. Remember, if we are using it after a clause, it should be used after a period or a semicolon. Otherwise, within a clause, only within a clause, should it be surrounded by a comma. But in this case, we notice that the clause, the sentence actually ends here. If you read properly, you realize that this is the end of one sentence on conquest. The sentence actually ends here. So what's wrong already is that we're using the word however after a comma. We're using however to begin a new clause, which shouldn't be correct if it's coming after a comma. So the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. However, nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing. Let's cross the word however, because it's been sandwiched. In this case, we're trying to say it's a non-essential clause. But look at what happens. This here, I'm going to use a different color. So this sentence down here in red, the one that I'm encircling in red, is what is going to look like once we remove that however. So we have the Tower of London was built during the Norman conquest. Nearly 1,000 years later, it still remains standing. Okay, so we have sort of a run-on sentence. We don't have anything properly punctuating this clause after conquest because we removed the word however, which is a non-essential clause. So we're not showing the transition between these two ideas. So this is incorrect. I hope that's made a bit of sense, but if you need me to explain this in a different way, I was just getting really into detail so you get it a bit more, but let me know if that's made it a bit more.
Yes, sir. That made it very clear. Thank you.
All right, awesome. All right, cool. Since more clear, we'll move on. So just let me know if there's something that you guys are unclear about, and we can go over that. All right. So I think that's that, by the way, that's pretty much the main idea of non-essential clauses. So if you guys are good here, best believe you're good. Let's see. Okay, so there's one important note here. If you're not sure about what type of punctuation should be used for a non-essential clause, a good trick is just cross out the word. Okay, the word or the phrase that's in question, and then read the sentence without it. Does it make sense without it? Good. So it should make sense grammatically, and it should also make sense contextually. So in context, it should make sense. Because sometimes you have some sentences that might make sense, maybe grammar-wise, but then the context doesn't even make sense. But if the surrounding, the overall sentence makes sense without the word or the phrase being used non-essentially, then best believe you can use 2 commas or 2 parentheses or 2 dashes, hyphens. Usually, if it doesn't make sense, you're going to create something like a comma splice. Okay, so I said this before, 2 commas do not always equal a non-essential clause. Just remember that. Let's look at an example here. London, which was one of the largest and most important cities in Europe during the Middle Ages, remains an important financial and cultural center today. Okay, so what happens if we cross that out? We have London remains an important financial and cultural center today. So we could use that as a non-essential clause. We could the part that's been cancelled out here in bold, we can take it out, right? It's a non-essential clause. That makes sense. No problem there. But let's look at a different sentence right there at the bottom of your screen. The sentence says, during the Middle Ages, London was one of the largest and most important cities in Europe, and today it remains an important financial and cultural center. So look at what happens if we cross out the information between the commas. We have during the Middle Ages, and today it remains an important financial and cultural center. So can anyone tell me why the second sentence is incorrect to cross out that as a non-essential clause?
It leaves the second part really dependent.
Okay, today it remains an important financial cultural center. Yes, that part is dependent on something that we don't have if we cross it out, because it remains. What remains an important financial cultural center? Is it the Middle Ages? What do you guys think remains an important financial and cultural center? Is it the Middle Ages?
The one way we can have that fixed whilst removing that is if we have, instead of we have during the Middle Ages, would have London there, but that's not even possible. So that's not essential.
Exactly. So London, what remains an important financial and cultural center today is London, right? But we've crossed out London. We've made London, so that doesn't make sense, right? Because we're now saying during the Middle Ages, and today it remains an important financial and cultural center. So this clause doesn't actually make sense at all. So that's wrong, because in this case, London. So what I'm trying to say is, remember, 2 commas can exist. So 2 commas do not always equal a non-essential clause. It should only be considered a non-essential clause if you can take the part out and it still makes sense. In this case, we are removing the clause that talks about London, which this last part depends on that, right? And today it remains an important financial and cultural center. That's supposed to be London. So if we cross that out, then we're losing the meaning of our sentence. So that just means that the commas in this situation, in this case, do not constitute a non-essential clause. All right, and this is an important note here. Okay, sometimes we have sentences that are going to set off a non-essential clause, but also, on top of them saying of the non-essential clause, they're also going to contain other commas that are there for different reasons, right? These commas that just serve unrelated purposes. So sometimes it's hard to tell quickly where the non-essential clause is, but remember the non-essential clause, this whole sentence should make sense without the non-essential clause. So let's look at this. Let's look at this clause right here. It says sumo wrestling, a full contact sport in which competitors attempt to force one another out of a circular ring, originated in Japan, which remains the only country in the world where the sport is practiced. All right. So I'll take this up a little bit so that you guys don't see that answer. And I want you guys to tell me where do you think, which part of this sentence do you think is a non-essential clause? Read it carefully, slowly, and then think about it. Make sure, does the whole sentence make sense without it? If it does, that probably is your non-essential clause. If it doesn't, look at it again and make another consideration. Oh, and I just want to mention, I'll put up something important about strong transitions. They always come with a comma. That's true. So a comma comes right after. That's true. Usually. Sometimes you might end with however. If you're ending a sentence with however, then probably it wouldn't. But for the most part, you remember non-essential clauses are always followed by a period or semicolon, and that's when they're beginning a new clause. And if not, if they're within the clause, they're surrounded by commas. I just want to say thanks to all for putting that in the chat for us. All right, so we are on the last sentence.
Sir,
Mm-hmm.
sir, I think the part where they describe exactly what is sumo wrestling is a non-essential clause.
Okay, so the part,
But if you cross it out, it would read sumo wrestling originated in Japan, which remains the only country in the world where the sport is practiced.
There you go, Jerome. That's excellent. That's actually excellent. Can everyone see that? Sumo wrestling originated in Japan.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, which remains the only country in the world where the sport is practiced. And that makes sense because sumo wrestling, originated in Japan just shows that the sport came from Japan. And then we still have Japan is, so usually what happens after the comma, just to give you guys another trick, after the comma, when you see a thing like which, whether what came before is a non-essential or not, usually this word which, best believe that the information that's coming after the word which is modifying or is giving more information to whatever came before which. So in this case, what came before which? We're talking about Japan. So what's coming after should correspond to Japan, right? Japan is the only country in the world where the sport is practiced, and that makes sense. So this sentence can make sense without it, just like Jerome pointed out. Sumo wrestling originated in Japan, which remains the only country in the world where the sport is practiced. Okay, so that you guys are doing fine. Okay, so that's correct. Yeah, let's look at it in this way. What do you guys think this would be incorrect if we crossed out originated in Japan? Read the sentence real quick and then tell me what you think would be wrong.
Sir,
Mhm.
actually analyzed that one already, sir. Because they said that because you cross out originated in Japan, it wouldn't really make any sense because when he said which remains the only country in the world where sport is practiced, no one that read the sentence would know which country you're talking about.
There you go, right? Because it's like, which country are you talking about? Because you haven't mentioned anything, right? So that just shows that originated in Japan is actually essential, right? So it's actually essential. So I want you guys to remember the purpose of looking at this question is that sometimes you have a comma here, you have a comma here, you have a comma here. So this is actually the non-essential clause, the first two commas. We have another comma in the sentence, but this comma is just serving normal punctuation purposes. A comma is just nicely creating a pause here. That's so that we avoid a run-on sentence. That's pretty much what that comma is for. So it's not necessarily that every time you see commas, you think this, for example, in this case, originated in Japan would be a non-essential clause. It's not necessarily the case. So remember, the main thing is you should read the sentence without the non-essential clause. Does it still make sense grammatically and contextually? If it makes sense in context, the grammar is okay, then yes, that's probably your non-essential clause. So I just wanted us to look at that. So you have an exercise right here on page page 107 on your device. It's probably page 111, the actual page. So you guys feel free to go through that. I will skip that, but please feel free to go through that. Sometimes people come and ask for questions. Most of you don't, but that's okay. But I'm guessing it means you got it. So you try to test yourself without it. You have the answers at the end of the book. Try to do without it, and then if you have any questions, anything that's troubling you, feel free to reach out to me. You have my contact information, and then we can look at it. Okay, now we are going to look at essential clauses with and without the word that. Okay, this is it's actually important. Okay. Okay, just 1 minute. Okay, so one thing I'm going to tell you is that the word that, excuse me, when you see the word that clause is going to be pretty much always essential, right, to the meaning of the sentence. So the word that should not be set off by commas. Actually, the word that, just like the way usually prepositions do not follow commas unless there's a non-essential clause, unless that comma is being used for the purpose of a non-essential clause. Similar with the word that, but what I want to tell you guys is that the word that usually is essential to the actual meaning. Okay, so the word that you see why when we see these examples, usually the word that is giving some important meaning or context. So the word that should usually should not be set off by commas or any other punctuation. So if you see the use of a comma just right after the word that or before the word that, that's, I guess, pretty much always incorrect, right? As the book has said, is virtually always incorrect. So let's look at an example. Parrots are one of the most difficult pets that a person can have. The problem with this situation here is that when you do that, it's kind of seeming like you've ended the clause right there. Parrots are one of the most difficult pets, because that could be a sentence. So look at what happens. Parrots are one of the most difficult pets that a person can have because they are intelligent, demanding, and live for up to 50 years. Okay, let's try to read the sentence without what's in the comma sandwich. So we cross out everything from that a person can have because they are intelligent. So from that up to the word intelligent, we have parrots are one of the most difficult pets, demanding and live for up to 50 years. That doesn't make sense, right? Parrots are one of the most difficult pets, demanding and live for up to 50 years. Doesn't make sense. Parrots are one of the most, let's look at the next version. What if we put a comma right after? Okay, so parrots are one of the most difficult pets that a person can have because they are intelligent, demanding, and live for up to 50 years. This is improper grammar because this comma here is actually not even necessary. Why should we make a pause right in the middle of a sentence? Parrots are the most difficult pets that, that what, you know what I mean? Like that comma shouldn't be there because this is just an improper use of a comma. But let's take out both commas before and after, and let's just leave the sentence as it is. Parrots are one of the most difficult pets that a person can have because they are intelligent, demanding, and live for up to 50 years. Now that makes sense because what's coming after that is just giving more meaning to the sentence. Okay, but at the same time, if we remove the word that, the sentence can still make sense. Okay, so the word that is essential if it's there, if the word that is existing in the sentence, then it's essential and shouldn't be followed by a comma, by any comma. If we want to not use the word that, we cannot use it. But if we're going to use it, we're going to not put commas around it. I guess this is how it works. We're going to respect the word that. Let's look at an example using the word without using the sentence without the word that. Let's look at this one here. So parrots are one of the most difficult pets a person can have because they are intelligent, demanding, and live for up to 50 years. Parrots are one of the most difficult pets a person can have. So you've noticed that the word that is actually optional. In this case, we don't have the word that here. So the word that can be used or not used is optional, but if you're going to use it, just make sure that yeah, you are not using any commas around it. Okay, just and if you're going to delete it, if you notice we removed it, but we haven't put any commas. If you're going to use it, no comma should be used in this place. So in a situation, this is a very important question that's right here, where I'm putting the little star or asterisk. So if you remove the word that, do not put a comma where it was, because that would be wrong. Do not place a comma here. Do not place a comma right there. So in a situation where the word that is optional, as long as you can take the word that out of the sentence, do not remove it and then put a comma. Either use it without a comma, or take it off, but do not use a comma. Like in this example here, parrots are one of the most difficult parrots are one of the most difficult pets a person can have because they're intelligent. That makes what looks like a comma splice here, because parrots are one of the most difficult pets could actually be a sentence on its own. A person can have, because it's like you're beginning a new sentence with information from a different clause. It's just improper use of grammar, and a comma is not necessary there. Okay, so we still together?
Yeah, we're still together.
Sure.
All right, awesome. Just making sure. Oh, okay. This is actually important. So we're looking at who. Okay, for non-essential and essential clauses. The good part is, I mean, you might not. The good part is we've actually kind of looked at this before. I'm not sure if you guys would remember. The best part is that we're going to go over it again for anyone who missed, for anyone who might be watching this on the channel or once it's uploaded as well. All right. So the case of who. The word who, when is it used essentially? When is it used non-essentially? Okay. So I want you to know that, remember I said things about non-essential clauses, you have to think about two things. Is it making sense contextually? So that's, is it making sense in context? And two, is it making sense grammatically, right? So both versions of the word who can be grammatically acceptable, but they may have different meanings. So we're going to look at an example down here. So the word who can be used obviously essentially, okay, with no commas, or non-essentially with two commas, or two dashes, or two parentheses, a pair of parentheses. But they can have them. They may be both grammatically acceptable, but they may have different meanings. Like in this example here, people who attend large open-air events such as sporting matches and music festivals often turn to camping as a cheap form of accommodation. All right, let's look at the second question down there. The second sentence right down there. People who attend large open-air events such as sporting matches and music festivals often turn to camping as a cheap form of accommodation. All right, so that's just the same thing. That's what happens when we remove the non-essential clause. But I want you guys to think of some. I want you guys to look at something. Oh, we don't have an example down here. Okay. So can you guys look at the first sentence, the one that's on top? People who, this one here, This is one I'm calling the first sentence right here. So it says, when we cross out the non-essential clause, it says people often turn to camping as a cheap form of accommodation, right? Now, I want you guys to know that when you do that, there's something that I want you guys to see, and let me know if you see it. Well, once I'm done explaining, let me know if you see it. When you do that, when you read the question as, when you read the sentence as people often turn to camping as a cheap form of accommodation, imagine you didn't have this non-essential clause. Who attend large open air events such as sporting matches and music festivals. That means people in general. People often turn to camping as a cheap form of accommodation because this is a non-essential clause. We removed it. This is a non-essential clause. And oh, so we actually do have an example. Let's look at the second one. In the second one, this is not a non-essential clause. We haven't put it with any commas. So the first one talks about people in general. So it just means people, and then it goes on to here. People often turn to camping as a cheap form of accommodation. So this is people in general. The other part is just non-essential. It's just secondary information. But this second one here, this second clause here, people who attend large open air events such as sporting matches and music festivals often tend to camping as a cheap form of accommodation. This means the people who often turn to camping as a cheap form of accommodation are these people who attend large open air events such as sporting matches and music festivals. So the second clause is talking about a specific group of people. It's talking about people who attend large open air events. But the first one is talking about people in general. The who attend large open air events such as sporting matches and music festivals, that's just secondary information. That's non-essential. So in the first one, we're talking about people in general. People often turn to camping as a cheap form of accommodation. But in the second part, we're looking at a specific group of people, those people who attend. So it's not non-essential. In this case, it's very essential, and that's why there are no commas. So here we're talking about a specific group of people, whereas in the first one, we're talking about people in general. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right, awesome. So that's with the case of
I have a
who.
question.
Oh yeah, okay.
Sir, for the second one, sir, how do you know the non-essential clause without the comma sandwich?
Okay, so for the second one, there's no non-essential clause. That's actually a good question. So there's no non-essential clause just because we don't have a comma sandwich. So the SAT, I mean, you're not going to be asked to necessarily like create. I want you to imagine this was maybe a different passage, and this is also like 1 and 2 are different passages. I just wanted. So in this case, I'm not really trying to focus on creating a non-essential clause. I know you know how to do that, but I want you to focus on the meaning of a sentence. So when you say, how do you know? You probably can't, just because there's no non-essential clause. So I want you to look at this. I want you to look at these two sentences as different. Imagine they're completely different. Imagine they're from 2 different passages. So in this case, the second one doesn't have a non-essential clause just because they're not 2 commas, just like you have noticed. So I know you know how to make non-essential clauses, but the only reason we're going through this is we're trying to understand the meanings of sentences. So I just want you to understand that in the first sentence, we are looking at people in general because we have a non-essential clause. So that part means if you had to find a passage that had that sentence, it means we're looking at people in general. That other part is just giving you more information, all right? Remember, non-essential clauses also modify what comes before. So they just give you additional information about the subject, and in this case, we notice that it's just giving us additional information about these people. These people love to attend large open air events. But in the second one, we're looking at only these people who attend large open air events. So the second one is looking at a specific group of people. The first one is looking at people in general. But to answer your question, we wouldn't, it wouldn't be, how would we know? Well, just like you said, there's no commas. So it just means that in this case, it's not non-essential. So it means in this case, the part in bold is very much essential. Why? Because it's trying to show you that we're looking at these people. So it's actually very, very essential. Whereas in the first one, we know it's not essential because of the commas. That means we can do without it. But in the second one, we can't do without it because we need to know that it's looking at a specific group of people. So this is just, we're just going over this for the sake of meaning, so that we understand like meaning and just the context of everything. So the second one, again, just to repeat, the second one is just reminding us that it's very much essential, and that's why we don't see any commas. But the first one is just showing us that it doesn't really matter, people in general just don't really matter. So that part is not essential. So these are just two different versions, just so that we understand meaning. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. I get what you mean. So number one is saying that everyone in general just thinks of camping as a cheap form of accommodation.
Mhm.
Number two is aiming at a specific group of people.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what's happening there. Yep.
Okay.
So, and if you notice something, have you noticed that number one and number two are both correct grammatically?
Yes, sir.
But have you noticed that making one non-essential and making one essential changes the whole meaning?
Yes, sir. That it really does, because
Yeah. So that's exactly what we're trying to focus on. So the meaning of the sentence just is really depending on where the commas are used. So if you ever find a sentence that can be written with or without the commas, remember only one version will be correct. So you should look at the context. Let's look at an example. So make sure you guys are even more comfortable. Let's look at one example. So can you guys read this? I know it's a bit of a long paragraph, but could you guys read through this quickly? Let me know what you think your answer is, and then I'll explain. Feel free to put in the chat box as well. Feel free to just, as soon as you find your answer, let me know, and then we'll go over it.
Choice D, sir.
All right, so we have 1D there. That's good. Let's look at anyone else who might have any other answer, and then I'll look at it quickly after you guys throw in all your answers. Actually, let me look at it now as well.
yes, sir. I choose D as well.
Okay, so we have 2 Ds. Okay, D is the leader of the day, huh? Well, let me see if we have anything in the chat. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're gonna go over this. And I also say my answer is also D. Can anyone say why A is wrong?
Sir, it excludes customers, and however, it's like customers are non-essential, but if we have no customers, who's buying the goods?
Okay, so in this case, it wouldn't be just customers, it wouldn't be customers, I know between however and customers, we have non-essential clause, but the non-essential part we're focusing on right now is who up to the 29th. So using that, can you explain why A is wrong? Remember again, non-essential clauses are usually set off by these W words. Remember which, whose, where, remember? So those words usually indicate the beginning of a non-essential clause, usually. So if we made customers a non-essential clause, that's correct. That wouldn't make sense. But what if we made who make purchases on February 29th non-essential? Would that make sense?
No, it would not,
No,
because it
sir.
stated further up in the passage that normally customers have 1 year to return their goods. So it says those who purchase on 29th have 4 years. That means it's system apart. It also
Okay.
sets it up by saying normally, and it says the return policy is kind of amusing.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So you do have to mention what happens if you take if you take it away, it's just talking about, have you not, wait, okay, before I say what I want to say, and that's very good, Audin. Jerome, you want to say something?
No, sir.
Okay, what I want to say is, have you guys noticed that if we take away who makes purchases on February 29th, it means we're talking about customers in general?
That's what I said.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So just like Audin said, right? It says the things happening with this return policy is working when I like how he said it, like it happens once. It's supposed to happen when that date happens again, right? The next occurrence of the date, right? So if we are looking at customers in general, that wouldn't make sense, just like Audin said, because they have 1 year. If you guys notice that. Is everything okay outside? I'm just hearing screaming. Okay, so I just want to ask if you guys have noticed what Audin was saying. Have you noticed that?
Yes, sir. I think what Alden was saying is that if you take out who makes purchases on the February 29th, it's basically saying that all customers have 4 years to return their items.
Exactly. Which is not true, right? Because like he said, normally customers have 1 year, which he also mentioned there, right? So everyone has seen that, right? So I know Jerome has seen that. I know Audin has seen that. Everyone else is quiet, but I guess everyone has seen that. So thank you for that explanation, Audin. So that's pretty much what I've been trying to teach here. So just like he had mentioned, and just like Jerome has also like pointed out too, normally customers have 1 year, right? So that specific part is focusing. It doesn't make sense for us to say customers in general. Because what happens is when we take out the who make purchases on February 29th, we are saying all customers, and that's not true. So we're trying to look at a specific group of customers, and that's what makes D correct, just like you guys said, and that's what makes D correct. So good job on that one. So customers who make purchases on February 29th, these specific people are the ones that have 4 years to return them, because normally everyone else has 1 year, because these guys believe that returning an item should happen on the next occurrence of that same date. But I want you guys to tell me what's wrong with B.
So repeat what you just said.
Yeah, I want you guys to tell me what's wrong with B. What makes B an incorrect answer, real quickly.
Sir,
Mm-hmm.
sir, without the comma at the end of 29th, sir, it's proving that customers is the non-essential clause.
Okay, yeah, so now we have everything. If we do that, it means everything from however, right, from customers, everything starting from here up to 29th will be a non-essential clause. And Also, the same reason why B is wrong is the same reason why C is wrong. Also, sorry. Actually, like everything from I was looking at C. Everything from however, like you said, the word customers here would just be non-essential. So we have however, customers is non-essential, and then who make purchases, and then the rest of the sentence doesn't even make sense. So B is wrong, thanks Jerome, because customers would be a non-essential clause. And this sentence wouldn't make sense without the word customers if you read it. And for the same reason, C is wrong because first of all, you can't have one comma, right? You should have two commas. So if you're going to make something non-essential, you should have two commas. So it means if February 29th, if the comma comes after February 29th, it means the first comma that's making this non-essential is the one that's coming after however. And then again, if you read without that clause, that doesn't make sense. So just like Jerome said, B is wrong because the word customers is non-essential, right? And C is wrong for a similar reason, right? Non-essential clauses are surrounded by two commas. So we're going to have the first comma coming after the word however, and then the next comma coming after February 29th, making that whole clause non-essential. And if you read it without that, if you read however, have 4 years to return that doesn't make sense. All right, so I just want to make sure we're all together. And let's look at another example. Look at another example real quickly. And then you tell me what you guys think the answer is. Oops. I lost it. Okay, there we are. Let me just zoom in a bit and then go down so you guys can see this.
Choice D.
Okay, so we have
Jerome.
1A.
So I said D.
Okay, we have 1D.
I said D as well. That makes 2 days.
Okay, so we have 2 Ds. All right, I'll just get into it. So looking at this question, the answer is actually D. Let's start eliminating. Does anyone want to say why A is wrong?
All right, because A adds another comma behind journalists, it separates journalists by sandwiching it. So if we're not talking about journalists, who's using the hexacopters?
Okay, good. Right, so if we take out journalists, that doesn't make sense, right? And then even if we take out the other part, journalists were forced to rely on conventional stories. If we take off, if we say the non-essential clause is starting after, let me just draw the comma. If the non-essential clause is starting from here up to here, it means we are referring to all journalists, right? Which is not true, right? So either way, this doesn't make sense because, like you said, who wanted to take those area shots? So A is wrong. Does anyone want to say why B is wrong? Thanks, Aldin, for that.
B is wrong because it puts a comma behind stories. If we take out from journalists to stories, it says in the past were forced. who were forced.
Exactly, exactly, right? It doesn't even make sense, right? And that doesn't even make sense because like now it's leaving you with questions who were forced. So we actually, it means what's in between is actually essential, making D correct. And then that also makes C wrong for the same reason. First of all, non-essential clauses should be surrounded by 2 commas, right? So these options with one comma is either 2 commas or no commas, right? So let's put it in that way.
Sir,
Yep.
so I'd say C is wrong because if the comma is not at stories, I mean, it did say that who wanted to, it said that who wanted to obtain aerial shots of events to accompany their stories who were forced to rely on conventional helicopters. If we take out all of that, it said that in the past, journalists which often flew too high, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, you might have as well have journalists, you might have, you're creating a whole different non-essential clause, right? Journalists which often, so you're moving from, okay, so what you're saying is you're moving from here, from journalist, and then you're moving to which often flew too high. That doesn't make sense, right? And another, so there's so many reasons this is wrong. So that's wrong because of that. And then you need 2 commas around what we think is non-essential. But even if we did that, that wouldn't make sense because we're looking at specific journalists, those who wanted to obtain aerial shots. So just to back it up, again, A is wrong because journalist is essential, just like Alden said. So we need that. Okay, and even if we're taking the next part as a non-essential clause, we're going to say journalists were forced, and that means all journalists, and that's not true. So C, just like Jerome said, we're creating this non-essential clause that's moving from journalists to which often flew too high, which also doesn't make sense. Again, remember, we also need either 1 comma or no, 2 commas or no commas. So in B and C have 1 comma for the parts that we know. If we already know what's supposed to be non-essential, then we can tell. And D has no commas, and it leaves the specific group of journalists we're looking at making D correct. All right, you guys are doing really good on this one. Okay, let me just zoom out again so we can return. So just remember that. Oh, and I want you guys notice that I remember sometimes we mentioned that sometimes, like look at A. Have you noticed that A makes sense grammatically, right? It might make sense grammatically, but it doesn't make sense when you look at the meaning of the sentence. Can you guys see that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So remember 2 things. You look at the grammar, but look at the context, look at the meaning as well. Okay, let's look at this example. We are nearing the end. We're nearing the end. We are nearing the end. So we just have to look at one more type of non-essential clause after this. So I want us to look at this example real quickly. This looks like a good example. Yeah.
Choice B, sir.
Okay, we have B.
Another D.
And I want you guys to read this carefully. Actually, I'm going to give you guys another hint as well. Okay, so we have another B. We have another B there. Mr. Jaden, long time as well. Okay, so we have another B in the chat. What I want you guys to do is I'll come back to this, and I want you guys to see something. This is actually a very interesting trick. I've seen the trick with this one. I want you guys to read this and look at what's in bold there. Okay, I'm giving you guys just like a minute to read this again. Look at the word that's in bold, and then I've underlined it in red. And then I'm just gonna give you guys a minute. Don't tell me your answers yet. Just read it. Okay, I hope you're done reading. Can I show you the next example?
Go on.
Okay, I hope it's the next example if I'm remembering correctly. Yep, there you go. And then look at this. Read this one as well, and pay attention to what's in bold. In an actual exam, this wouldn't have been in bold, but again, you might not find a question like this. But anyway, I want you guys to look at this one, and where's keeps showing the answer. Don't you guys see the answer yet? Come on. All right, just try to look at the explanation. I mean, look at the sentence real quick, and then tell me on what you think the answer here is, and then we'll go back to the first one, and then we'll see what's correct and what's wrong. Does anyone see the answer here? You guys are going quiet this time.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
No change.
Okay. All right. So that's actually correct. The answer is A. Do you want to tell us why?
Yeah, sure. First thing, we'll start off with canceling out choice B. It says the the envelope marked Alaska Commercial Company. There's a comma right there, and there's comma all the way down at the part that says research the company. If that is all taken out, it says that the passage has nothing to do with the company, which is the whole root of the passage. So that cannot be negated. Choice C says the envelope marked Alaska Commercial Company. It's the same thing. It says the envelope, and then it cuts off all of the named marked Alaska Commercial Company. But then again, the sentence before that says filled with envelopes. If we cut out that identification, how do we know which envelope we're talking about?
Exactly. That's what I was looking for. All right. Thank you. Just okay. So could you using that same thought, I want you to look at this one again and then tell me what you think the answer is.
So I still got the answer choice B.
Oh, sir, on second deliberation, it's C. B
There you go.
was initially my thought, but the reason why I say it's wrong now is because it says the envelope marked Alaska Commercial Company. It's like it's saying that the envelope is the one conjunction with the Alaska Commercial Company. While choice C says the envelope and there's a comma, it says it's describing the envelope. Choice B does
Exactly.
not do that.
Exactly. So, like the part that comes after, what do you call it? The part that comes after the envelope is just describing which particular envelope by saying it's marked Alaska and everything. But yeah, I agree. The answer is C. So that the reason why the answer is C. Do you guys remember? Okay, we'll go back so that I hope you guys will remember the explanation that Audin just gave us, and that's what I was looking for. Have you noticed that this thing only has one envelope? The bag only has one envelope. You guys can see that, right? It has an envelope, right?
Yeah, it would have been B would have been correct if it says the envelope.
Exact. Which one? You said which one?
I said B
Oh,
would
okay.
have been correct if it says the envelope instead of an envelope.
Exactly. Okay, yeah. So if it had said the envelope, and maybe if you also add, like, maybe let's say, I would say if you remove this in general, B could have also made sense, right? Just the envelope, right?
Yes, sir.
Because we already know that. Okay, look, in 2004, and thank you for that. In 2004, while rummaging in a Seattle basement, historian and journalist J. Penelope Goforth came across a silver shopping bag with an envelope inside. So there was only one envelope. So the envelope immediately caught her attention, right? So we can remove this. The envelope immediately caught her attention. Why? Because we know there's only one envelope. So it doesn't, the part that says marked Alaska Commercial Company, that's non-essential. That's just modifying. It's just giving you extra information about the envelope. It doesn't really matter what the envelope was called or what was marked in it, because there's only one envelope. It says a bag with an envelope. So our answer is C. Whereas in this situation, let's look at this. It says in 2004, while rummaging in a Seattle basement, historian and journalist J. Penelope Goforth came across a silver shopping bag filled with envelopes. So there was a bunch of envelopes here. There's more than one envelope. So the envelope marked, so now we're looking at a specific envelope. The first one, we're only looking at one envelope. It doesn't really matter. So we could give extra information if we want to. But in here, we do not need any commas around marked Alaska Commercial Company, because we're looking at a specific envelope that caught her attention. Which one is this envelope that was marked Alaska Commercial Company? That's the one that immediately caught her attention. So the first one is the bag only has one envelope, so it doesn't really matter. And in this case, we're looking at a bag filled with envelopes, more than one, plural. So we have to specify. Is everyone okay there? I know this one is kind of tricky, but once you see it, then then I guess you see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, awesome. So I just want to make sure, I hope everyone really is okay, and then that's good. So again, remember, it's all about context, you know. So sometimes the SAT focuses on small details like that. I don't think for many times you have to worry about such questions, but I would say maybe this probably might be like one of the hardest types of questions you ever see to do in non-essential clauses. And especially with the new SAT, I don't think you're going to have to worry too much about, or let me not speak on that, but it should be good. As long as you understand that, it should be good. Let's look at with commas with names and titles. So the thing about commas with names and titles is, I would just say that a comma can come, a name, right? And any title can have commas, right? Before, they can be after. You just need to know, the name can be in the middle of a sentence, as well. But you just need to know, again, if I cross it out, does it make sense? So we're just dealing with one simple rule with non-essential clauses. If I cross it out, will it make sense? In context, will the grammar be okay? If it is, then you're good. But I'm just going to tell you that whenever a name is in the middle of a sentence, Okay, so it's not the first word, it's not the last word. It's somewhere. It's not the first word, it's not the last word. It's either we have both commas or no commas. That's the only rule I can tell you to remember, maybe. But again, there's some rare instances when you can have one comma. And I think this book has an example, so we'll look at that. Oh yeah, actually, it actually says here, in rare instances, single comma may be required after the name or title for other reasons, as discussed later in the chapter. So you just need to know that if it's in the middle, we have two or no commas. If the name is in the middle. But again, essentially the golden rule of non-essential clauses, check it out. Does it make sense in context? Does it make sense grammatically? And then you're good. That's let's look at a quick example. So I want you guys to tell me what you think on this one. Just look at it real quick. These are the last type of non-essential clauses we're looking at. So we're almost there. I think we just should have just probably like 3 more examples and we're done. But we'll move as fast as you guys move. But don't rush though, don't rush though.
Choice C.
Okay, so we have 1 C. Okay, anyone else?
So I'm going for a C.
Okay, we have 2 C's. Okay. What I'm going to do is let me show you guys something.
So I started to look like A is a correct answer as well. This one's a bit confusing.
Okay. All right, we have we have another. Okay. I think you said A. Was that Jaden? Because I've just seen the chat box. Okay. No. Okay, that wasn't. All right. Because I've seen another A in the chat box. Okay, let's look at this. It might look confusing, and I'll show you guys a trick. But before I even get to the trick, let's look at something. So Ada Lovelace and her acquaintance Charles Babbage were two of the most influential figures in the history of computer science. Okay, so if I remove Charles Babbage, like the way A says, right? A says this is non-essential. So we say Ada Lovelace and her acquaintance were two of the most influential figures in the history of computer science. After Babbage sketched out, okay, so have you noticed that the word like Babbage has been introduced here, but we crossed out Babbage, so we know that Charles Babbage should actually be essential. Does that make sense? So okay, so we can remove A. Okay, so I'm just trying to clear everyone's doubts here.
That means I'm great with C then.
Okay, so well, A, but everyone who said A, Jaden, Jerome, are you with me that A is not the answer? Just making sure.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, so I'm converting everyone away from A. So we removed A. I'm just glad they were all there. Okay, so right now it's C. Okay. Let's look at C. Where's my eraser? I'm going to erase this. Okay, so let's look at C. Ada Lovelace and her acquaintance Charles Babbage were two of the most influential figures in history. Okay. And then let's also remove D. Let's remove D. No one said D. So D is wrong because it says, and her acquaintances, Charles Babbage, but that's one person, right? We're two of the most influential. So we can cross out D, right? We're just left with B and C, right? Is that okay?
That's fine. I get what you're saying.
All right. Let's look at the tricky one. So most people are saying C. A quick thing I'll tell you is so first of all, let's start with what I said at the beginning here. Remember this thing that was important here? Whenever you have a name, so this is like a quick shortcut, and I'll tell you another one. I'll share another one. Whenever you have a name in the middle, so that means the name is not the first, it's not the last word. It's either we have 2 commas or no commas. So I already know that C is wrong because we only have 1 comma. So around the name, if a name is in the middle of a sentence, that's a shortcut. If a name is not the first, it's not the last. A shortcut that you guys should know is that for a name, it's either we have 2 or no comma. So we should have 2 or 0 if it's in the middle. So I already know C is wrong. But let's look at it from a meaning point of view. So that was just a shortcut. Let's look at it from a meaning point, a meaning or context point of view. So the thing with C is, if you say Ada Lovelace and her acquaintance Charles Babbage, that means Charles Babbage was her only acquaintance. Does that make sense? Can you guys see that? Can you guys see? It's a concept that's a bit hard to explain. But whenever you have a comma,
So I think I get what you're saying, because when you said that Ada Lovelace and her acquaintance Charles Babbage, they're implying that it's only her and Charles Babbage that revolutionized the computer. Science.
More so, implying that. But exactly, as long as you see the only part, then you're good. So that's all I need you to see right there. So if I say maybe let's say I say Jerome Willisey and his car, the Toyota Prado, right? I don't think they make those cars anymore today, but anyway, when you say Ada Lovelace and her acquaintance Charles Babbage, it means the only acquaintance Ada Lovelace had was Charles Babbage, because you put that comma. So it's like you're ending it. You're making that pause there. That comma is showing that this person's only acquaintance is actually Charles Babbage. But when you say Ada Lovelace and her acquaintance Charles Babbage, when there's no comma, it means Ada Lovelace could have had many acquaintances. But right now, we're just looking at one specific acquaintance who happens to be Charles Babbage. I want you guys to think of that and then look at B and C and tell me if you get what I'm trying to say.
I get it.
Oh, okay, that was quick. That was quick. So this is a concept that's usually overlooked, and it's possible that Ada Lovelace only had one acquaintance, but you know, we can assume in the SAT, or in 2023, we can assume many things, but you get what I'm trying to say. So what I'm trying to say is, I want you guys to think of it this way. Shortcut is whenever a name is in the middle of a sentence, it should either have 2 or no commas. So in this case, C, we have 1 comma, so 1 is wrong. I mean, C is wrong, D is wrong. And A is wrong. We know why A is wrong, because Babbage is mentioned later, so we know that's an essential name. So that makes B our correct answer. But then that's just a quick one. That's just if you guys want to answer this one real quickly. But if you want to think of it from the meaning point of view, remember, whenever you have one comma, I mean, whenever you have commas around the name, that implies that that's the only person or thing. For example, A as well. Actually, think of it from the point of A. C is just wrong because of the comma, to be honest. The explanation I was giving actually applies more to A. Can you guys look at A? I think A will make you understand what I was trying to say. If you say Ada Lovelace and her acquaintance were two of the most influential. So if you remove Charles Babbage, another reason why A is wrong. So if take my explanation and extend it to A actually. Can you guys see that the first one just implies that Charles Babbage was Ada Lovelace's only acquaintance? If we remove this part, can you guys see that? If we say Ada Lovelace and her acquaintance, and then we cross out this part where two, this just implies that she only had one acquaintance. Can you guys see that?
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's literally what I needed you guys to see. So with C is just actually wrong just because of the placement of the comma. You actually shouldn't even put a comma between a verb and any subject or a pronoun like this. For example, if I say let me give you guys a really quick example. If I say I'm going to use Audin as an example. If I say can you guys tell me what's wrong with this sentence real quickly?
Yeah, the comma shouldn't be there.
Yeah, there shouldn't be a comma between the subject and
Yeah,
the
the
verb.
comma should be there either.
Exactly. So that's kind of what's happening in C as well. There's so many reasons why this would be wrong. Ada Lovelace and her acquaintance Charles Babbage. Where is just a verb, guys? So it's just a verb like are, is. It's a regular form of like the word is. So that makes C wrong. But again, remember, if the name is in the middle of a sentence, it's two commas or no commas at all. So the actual explanation I gave you fits for A. And I want you guys to remember that. So whenever you have two commas, just think like in this case, it's showing like only one person. But if you remove it, it shows that there could be many acquaintances. But we're looking at a specific acquaintance, Charles Babbage. And that Charles Babbage should be essential. Why? Because Babbage is actually mentioned again in the fourth line. So Babbage comes again here. So we know that Babbage is an essential name. And we're looking at one specific, remember, we've been looking at overall acquaintances. We've been looking at a specific, overall group and a specific group. So in this case, we're looking at a specific acquaintance by the name of Charles Babbage, which makes B correct, which makes C wrong. We already looked at why A and D are incorrect. Is everyone okay now?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. All right.
Yes, sir.
That's beautiful. Let's look at let me see, how many more examples do we have? Okay, so we have 3 examples. Yeah, we have 3 examples, but I can see that the last 2 this one and the last one are the same. So you don't have to read the full sentence for now. I mean, you don't have to read the full paragraph for now. In actuality, I would encourage you to just like read through so you don't miss anything. But for now, we're just trying to look at examples. Another example that involves the title. So you guys look at it quickly. Let me know your answer. We finish these last 3, we call it a day.
So I believe the answer is B.
Okay. We have 1B. Good. Let's see, what else do we have? Anyone else?
Choice C, sir.
Okay, we have a C. Okay. Anyone else? We have a B, we have a C. Okay. I'll get into it real quick. So that we, oh, where am I going? All right. So it says Caribbean author Jamaica Kincaid is also known. No one said A. I guess we're okay here. So Caribbean American author Jamaica Kincaid is also known for being an enthusiastic essayist and gardener. Does anyone want to tell me why this is wrong?
There's a comma at the front, but none at the back.
All right. So remember, for whenever a name is under, I want to point this out again. Whenever a name appears in the middle, it's not the first or the last. It means it's either 2 commas or no commas. But remember, there's a rare instance, right? There's some rare instances when you can have a single comma, but we haven't seen any so far. But there's a rare instance. But remember, the shortcut, regardless of how it looks, the simple shortcut is always cross that part out and see, does it make context? Okay. I mean, does it make sense in context without that part? If it does, then, and the grammar is okay, then probably that's a non-essential clause. All right. So again, where are we? Caribbean. Okay, here. So using that regard, we can cancel A and D, right?
Yes, sir.
Now we need to know, is the name Jamaica? Do you guys think the name of the author is essential or not?
Sir, the name of the is essential, actually.
Yes, it is essential.
It is okay. So since we all agree that it's essential, then we can remove this. So our answer is actually B. You see, actually, it can be as easy as that. All right. Any confusion? Because this is what happens. If we keep C, look at what happens. We're going to have Caribbean American author is also known for being an enthusiastic essayist and gardener. But who are we talking about? It goes on to talk about the same person again. She was blah blah blah. She, like, we need to know who is she, because this person is actually essential to this passage. Does that make sense? We're good? Everyone's good here? Everyone just went out. You guys here? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, awesome. Okay, I see the chat box. Sorry. Okay, good. All right. Let's consider this one real quickly. So second last example. Let's consider this one real quickly. So I guess you just tell me answers real quickly. We go over it. We go over the last one. We call it a day. Remember, when you cross it out, it should make sense grammatically. It should make sense in context.
So for this one, I'll choose C.
Okay, C. Anyone else? Anyone else?
D, sir.
D, okay. All right, I'll just get right into it. So I've always been interested in gardening, but until recently, I didn't have a room for flowers or plants. When I moved into a new house last summer, however, I was thrilled to discover that there was enough space in the yard for a garden. There was just one problem. I'd never actually planted one. So I called a friend, right? I called a friend. Okay, it's a friend. I called a friend who had a lot more gardening experience than I did. Luckily, that friend, Jane, agreed to come over the next day. Okay, so let's see if we can read this without Jane. So I called a friend who had a lot more gardening experience than I did. Luckily, that friend agreed to come over the next day. Okay, so do you guys think Jane is actually essential to this paragraph that we have, this passage?
It can do without it.
Okay, awesome. That's it.
Yeah, I think
That's all I need to know. So answer is A. So let's use a shortcut. Let's try to use a shortcut. On a normal instance, okay, there's some rare cases, but on a normal instance, if it's in the middle of the sentence, like here, the word Jane is not at the beginning, it's not the first word, it's not the last word. It means two or no commas at all. So we have 2 commas here. I mean, we have 1 comma here, 1 comma here, so we can cancel B and C. And then let's see, we realize that luckily that friend Jane agreed to come over the next day. There's if we remove the commas, we realize that Jane is not essential anyway, because we just got a friend and she came over. It doesn't go on to add any other information about her, so she's actually not really essential. We just need to know that a friend came, and that same friend, because it says that friend, so that same one came still. You notice that the comma is coming after the word that, so it means you're not being tested on that. Remember, we looked at that today, so that's not what we're being tested on. And anyway, I just wanted to point that out in case anyone thought of that question, even as they will be watching this video, or in case you ever come back to this recording. So that friend who was called came. Okay, that's all we need to know. Okay, it's not like it was another friend, it was that same friend that was called. So everything is okay. So I'm glad that you guys said it's not essential. So it means you guys know that. So which means A is our answer, because it still makes sense. So I got a friend who had a lot more gardening experience than I did. Luckily, that friend agreed to come over the next day. So we're good. Any confusion before I move on? Is there anyone who still has maybe like, I still think this is an answer, or is there any disputes, anything, any confusions,
No, sir.
All right, awesome. Then we can go on to our last example. And I want you guys to so our last example, just take your time, look at it properly. Yeah, just look at it properly and let me know what your answer is. Remember, think about the meaning of the sentence as well. So not only grammar, but think about the meaning of the sentence as you're answering. Ask yourself in context, does this make sense with or without whatever you're removing or not removing? Anyone got an answer yet?
First B, we got, sir.
Okay, we have a B. Anyone else?
I chose B as well.
All right, awesome. Okay, so okay, let me see if there's anyone else who said anything in the chat box. But yeah, okay, I just want to say first of all, big ups to you guys for recognizing that one. So normally, like I said, you know, you just need to ask yourself two important questions, right? Ask yourself, does it make sense without it? Like grammatically, and then does it make sense in like in context, like the meaning? Would I need this word if, or you know, will I need to take it out, or do I need to keep it? So remember, usually when you have a name in the middle, like it's not the first word, it's not the last word, and it's in the middle of the sentence, usually we need 2 commas or no commas. But remember, I talked about how there's a rare instance. This is one of the rare instances. So what happens is so yes, the answer is B, because it talks about a novel, which is a semi-autobiographical story, but then about a young girl growing up in Antigua, but we won't know which semi-autobiographical story it is if we made Annie John non-essential, right? So A is wrong, right?
Yes, sir. We can lose A.
Yes, sir.
We can also
Yeah.
lose B because it's run on.
Exactly. And then this is around you guys. All right, yes, that's correct. That's correct. And then this is a run-on. And then in this case, the novel, so Annie John, a semi-biography, it also like begins a clause that it's not nothing is really being modified, but a semi-autobiographical story modifies what comes before, which is the novel Annie John, making this correct and making that wrong as well. So the answer is actually correct, because we need more context, right? What is the name of the autobiographical story? So without the comma, we just
Another thing that would make C wrong is
Uh-huh.
because it doesn't put a comma between John and semi-autobiographical, which kind of says it's like, it's kind of changing the subject of it.
Oh yeah, because exactly, because the novel is a semi, okay, right? And then so it doesn't put a comma. And again, if we put a comma, again, that would be wrong because we're not giving we don't know which specific novel again, so it means we need only 1 comma after John, right? You're right. Yeah. So it does kind of change it changes the subject, because if we put a comma after John and Annie John, then it means we have the novel, but we don't know which specific novel. I love the way you guys are thinking. Yeah, so B is the correct answer because we need to know the name of the novel. You know, we can't just go in and modify it. Like, what are we modifying? What is the semi-autobiographical story of a young girl growing up in Antigua? So this brings us to the end of our lesson. I'll stop sharing my screen now. You guys have any questions?
No, sir. Thanks for the session. You're a legend.
Thanks, man. Thanks for your time, guys. We'll pick it up. Sorry?
So I just want to say thanks a lot for your time, because this session was really helpful. Thanks again.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And thank you guys for your participation.
Yeah, thanks. I love the competition.
Yeah, I love the participation. Well, next time we're picking up from chapter 10. So we're going to just do chapter 10 is just like 4 pages. So make sure you see that. And then what I would love to do afterwards is because now we're recording and uploading on YouTube. So I need to we need to have a recording of the other 9 chapters we did that we didn't record. We're going to probably go through them. But I'll be interchanging with past papers and maybe joining you guys with in math as well. So yeah, again, thanks for your time. I'll end the recording here.